Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. How are you doing?
You know, I already feel like it's been a week and it's
Mhm.
Tuesday.
And it's Tuesday.
Yeah. I I don't know if you've heard about the most recent police shooting that
Mhm.
happened.
Mr. Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was it was for a traffic stop over of air freshener.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just really upsetting to see that like it was 10 miles away from where the trial for George Floyd is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. In a time where we are in like a race war, essentially, and you pulled him over air freshener.
Yeah. And they're saying that the officer didn't mean to discharge her weapon. She meant to get a taser, but I'm also just like, if you can't tell a taser from a gun.
Yeah. Everything about this story is extremely sketchy to me because at first they said he had an outstanding warrant, but then they said they pulled him over because of the air freshener. And then they shot a taser, but actually shot a gun.
And,
What?
yeah. And I just, when will it end?
Mhm.
Because, like, this has historically been something that it's been an issue since the founding of this country, since even before then. And we're even into a point where we are talking about this in a book club that we are posting online. And there are several organizations that work to end police brutality, work to preserve the lives of Black and Brown people. And this is still happening in real time.
Yeah, it feels like we get an update every week of a new Black body that is no longer here because of an unjust system.
Ugh. Yeah. Like, it's it was hard to read this chapter, honestly, for me, knowing what is going on right now.
Yeah,
What about you?
this chapter to me was just a continual. I feel like there's been a theme of people, Black and brown people can't be racist because they are Black and brown people. And I feel like we've discussed this a couple of times where it's because of that power dynamic that we believe has to be there in order for racism to be a factor. But this is a whole chapter dedicated to that, so it was really interesting. It kind of felt like a tying the bow kind of feeling where he just
Yeah.
really addresses that.
And like, I think whenever it mentions how like people of color can kind of use that almost as just an out to
Mm-hmm.
perpetuate anti-Black racism and racist ideals. Like, we do see that. We do see there, like, our Madam Vice President was known as, like, what was it? A police? Some, like, just, what was it? She was a DA.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just considered her another branch of the police force,
Yeah.
essentially, and had a lot of criticism to say about her policies on mass incarceration in California.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that was definitely like probably her biggest pushback when she was running for president. It was her record as a DA and how strictly she enforced the rules.
Yeah, rules that we know to be unjust.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I don't know. It's like, where do we go from here whenever we're talking to people of our own color, of our own race, about the internalized racism and still perpetuating these systems? Like, I don't know how to talk to other Asians about it, honestly.
Yeah. It depends on how close I am. I'm being 100% honest in how I approach it. My family, they're pretty aware that if they say something that is racist, I'm going to say, okay. So I've gotten like specific scripts. So if someone says something about like the Hispanic population, and the one I hear the most is like, oh, like Mexicans, right? And so I say, do we know they're Mexican? And that makes me feel good because it's a nice nice line that's straight to the point, and then they know, don't try that around me, right? But and I mean, that's why I really appreciate this, because I hear all the time when I do counter, oh, Black people can't be racist. And it's like, I really appreciate how he emphasized that we do have power. Like each individual has the power to be anti-racist. It's not, when I hear Black people can't be racist, I think it means because we've been victims and we continue to be victims of racism, that we can't be the perpetrators. But I know that not to be true because I hear Black people say racist things all of the time. So that's how I try. I try to have go-to things to say, so in that way I'm not caught in the moment and want to say a million things but too nervous to say anything. But I've had a lot of practice. So that definitely comes with time.
Oh my goodness. That is actually really great advice. I don't have a go-to line for calling out like individual racism other than being like, yo, that's racist. Especially like whenever it comes to certain people, I'll just cut off the conversation. I'll be like, all right, there's no talking to you about this because like I'm not going to change your mind and you already know how I feel about this. Oh my goodness. Like,
I think it takes significant strength to be able to say this conversation is done. It is so hard sometimes for me to walk away because it's like, I need you to understand why that's wrong and why I'm right, right? And I need to continue to tell you that until you believe me. But that, I mean, that cannot be it. You're not going to change everyone's mind, but your job is to insert a different perspective and then let them work with that, however it plays out in their life.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love how Kendi once again dove into the historical aspect of this facet of racism, like going all the way back to like chattel slavery and slave trade as well, which I personally interpreted a lot of the actions that Black people would have against other Black people would be a huge trauma and survivor response. Because like when we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be the most charitable and like caring person if I still have basic needs that need to be met. Like,
right.
I personally know I will go straight on Hunger Games on someone if I am looking for basic resources. So, and that's traumatizing in and of itself, not having that. So that was like my thought whenever they were talking about how like Black and brown bodies can also perpetuate racism and racist ideals.
Yeah.
Even the ones in power.
I agree. I mean, I didn't even know everything that happened in Ohio with Bush's election. I have never heard of that. And the mayor, was he, that continued to like work towards voter suppression of Black people to make sure Bush got in office, which I have so many thoughts. But yeah, I mean, to me, when I read that, I thought assimilation. That is their goal, you know, even at the expense of their people.
Like whenever it comes to community versus your individual well-being, I think it's just human nature for individual well-being to be put above community. I remember reading Night by Elie Wiesel back in 8th grade, and one of the biggest things that hit me during the Holocaust was whenever he was describing being in the concentration camp and just the sheer lack of humanity all of these people had, even within there were ranks even within all of them being in that concentration camp together.
Right.
Because they were just trying to survive.
Right.
So I think it's a very similar concept whenever we're socially speaking, like even with people of color in power, we're just trying to survive still in this system that was not built for us. Like, I know that doesn't excuse some of the support that these racist policies have made against other bodies, but it kind of gives me a little bit of an understanding, I think.
Right. Perspective on where they come from, because it's how they have survived. So then they continue to survive. Yeah. Which is assimilation. Why white supremacy is so dangerous. Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, it's crazy to think about that. But I mean, even in school, I feel like we had that mentality of only white people can be racist because of the power element.
Definitely. That's the only way I've ever thought of it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And like we even talked about this last week. We were like anti-white racism. That's a thing.
Excuse me.
Like, I think it's like perpetuating the idea that we can't be racist against white people, but we can be racist against each other, which has been proven again and again. I know when it comes to Asians, there is a large debate going on about Asians perpetuating anti-Black racism. And there's not a bunch of Black and Asian solidarity, especially with the rise in all of the hate crimes with COVID and everything happening. I know that that's been a huge debate, in looking for just evidence of Black and Asian solidarity.
And then that goes back. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is the LA riots, where it was the Black and Asian communities at war against each other. Yeah, it's not a great history and a great present, I would say, either.
Like, but like honestly, in seeing the solidarity that we're trying to promote now, like whenever I went to my last protest a week or so ago, protesting the anti-Asian hate crimes, it was being led by organizers of Black Lives Matter. So showing that solidarity within that, because I feel like just organizing and coming together is really going to help just I don't know, just help us move forward and to stop perpetuating these ideals that we are against each other, fighting for whatever small pieces of the human rights pie we can get when it's not a pie.
Yeah, I remember in New York going to a religious debate, and it was like someone of definitely Jewish faith, someone of, I think, Christian, no one Christian faith, and then someone of Muslim faith. The Quran is from the Muslim faith. Yeah. Okay, yes, Muslim faith. And the woman of Muslim faith, she was talking about how there's a proverb where a bunch of people are fighting each other, kind of like a crabs in a barrel kind of mentality, where we're all in the bottom fighting each other to get to the top. And so she was essentially saying that there was a fight to be the better minority amongst the minority groups. And so that's just kind of what I think about. We have to show that solidarity, because like for me, if people come at my Asian peeps, they're coming at me. They come at my Hispanic people, they're coming at me. It is like white supremacy, racism, sexism, it is homophobia. Like I can go down the list, but it's all an attack at someone's human rights, and that's not okay with me. And then I think you have to look at intersectionality. Like there are Black people who are also of Asian descent, and there are Black people who are also a member of the LGBT community. There's no way I could say for me that I am Black Lives Matter if I'm not supporting all Black lives. So it's interesting that there's not that solidarity, because to me, it's like solidarity within the human race.
Yeah. I think that like organizing has just become so much easier now, and being able to really get into communication with others on a more personal level. Like if I get into it on Instagram with someone, I can just send them a quick DM and be like, okay, this is my perspective, and I know that you just posted this because it's a public forum. And I low-key do that. It's not great for my mental health, but I do low-key fight people on Instagram occasionally.
I think a good Instagram fight where you win is good for the self-esteem.
Yeah. But when you get too emotional into it, it's not great for my diagnosed depression and anxiety, let me tell you.
This is a fair point.
Social media in that case is just definitely a double-edged sword, because like it gives us all this prime access to organizing, to knowing what's happening like in our country, in our world. And we don't have to go through like the regular channels. Like we can see things live. Like I was live streaming the protest I was at.
Right.
But at the same time, it does expose us to a lot more of that trauma, because the human brain was not meant to be traumatized constantly.
Right. Which can be
So,
ultra felt like right now, where you're getting live updates of every single thing that is happening. Yeah. It can be overwhelming.
yeah, especially with the current news cycle. And then on top of that, we've been in a pandemic for over a year now. It's just, it is just crazy. I think that it's so remarkable that Kendi was like in his early 20s when he was doing this work. I'm 26 and I'm just now doing it.
He is a unicorn in all senses. He is one of a kind, definitely. I mean, how he has responded to everything as like an elementary school student or a college student, that maybe now I could begin to formulate like an inch of the same response. It's amazing.
Like, do you also follow him on Twitter?
I do not. I do need to do that.
So seeing his responses to these events in live time has also just been so impactful for me, because like this is a pretty recent book.
Yeah.
Like it mentions the Trump administration. It mentions like things that have impacted our lifetime as well as historical context. But like to also see him responding to these very real events in like on a live Twitter feed, it's like being able to be inside of his head, which I think is so cool.
That sounds amazing. Yes, I will do that.
Like, I'm gonna look up his Twitter feed right now, actually.
Okay,
so
while you do that, I'm gonna call him.
yeah. Ibram Kendi. So his most recent tweets, he's working on the 1619 project right now, which is curated essays about the beginning of slavery in the US. And then his other most recent tweets are talking about
talking about the trial, talking about this most recent killing. And so he really is a leader in the anti-racist sphere, you know? Like, it's really cool to see him and have this access to him, you know?
Right. And that's the beautiful thing about the accessibility of social media. But as you did mention, there is certainly a downfall where we have 24 access to everyone, 24/7 access to everyone. That's certainly, I remember March Madness, Ohio State, I didn't watch the game. They lost the game that they should have won. And the fan base got at a player.
Sorry.
They got at a player, and it was, they said very demeaning, dehumanizing, racist things to this player. I wish I could.
Oh, snap. I remember that. I remember seeing an article about that.
And it's just like the fact that, okay, college basketball, not that serious. Really nothing is that serious. And then second, the fact that they were able to just DM him all of this hate, that's a downfall, specifically with white supremacists and racists all around.
Absolutely. I feel like the anonymity of social media also just really empowers the crazy racists. I'm just gonna go ahead and call them crazy racists.
Social work is political. Sorry. Or that's not even political, excuse me.
That's just some people are crazy racists.
They exist.
They exist in these far corners, but it also brings them that much closer to us actually doing the work. And that can cause deep psychological harm if you're not properly equipped and trained to handle that kind of verbal abuse on a regular basis.
And no one should have to, I think, even if we see different perspectives, the not racist perspective and the racist perspective. There feels to be a correct side, but okay. At some point, I would hope, like you were talking about with being able to step away from an argument, we're not going to change each mind. You would hope that there would be some type of unwritten rules where we don't call people out of their names. We don't call people racist or racial slurs, you know, but those don't exist. It feels like social media is it can be this very ambiguous gray area, which is very dangerous.
Yeah, I think everyone needs therapy, personally.
I agree.
Like,
I 100% agree.
I actually just got a text from my therapist and it just flashed on the screen right now. So that's my pitch.
Plug.
That's my plug. Everyone needs therapy. Oh gosh, this was a rough chapter. They're all rough chapters.
Every week.
Every week it's just a profound and rough chapter. And then I feel like especially this week, given that it is, what are we in, week 2 of the Chauvin trial?
Yes.
Yeah.
This might be 3.
Time is a construct.
2, 3. Yeah. Week 2, 3. Yes.
And just from what I've read about it, I haven't seen any of it live yet, but the articles that I'm reading about like how this trial is going on for so long and the entire, like, it was captured on video. This death was literally captured on video. I don't know how much more evidence you need.
Yeah. It almost feels like there should be, I was thinking this yesterday because they had some type of commercial. I think there was a summarizing or you could watch it live. And I was thinking, you would think that for some, you could just expedite it. Guilty. And they get the verdict and then, you know, the family can get some peace and move on. I can't imagine what it's like for the family right now.
Like, especially for such a publicized trial. like everyone knows about what is happening.
Yeah, and it's so obviously wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think it could be any more in the wrong area. There, you know, all of the character breaking down that they usually do in court, it's not gonna, well, hopefully it would not work this time because it's so evidently wrong that the cop was in the wrong.
Yeah. And I think I saw someone on social media mentioned that like they were just like, there's not gonna be any change because police continue to get away with this with either a slap on the wrist or administrative duty, or they got nervous and accidentally discharged their weapon and didn't mean to point it at someone. Like, there doesn't seem to be strong incentives to stop this, which is really upsetting.
Yeah, because this is the law.
Like, I don't know what kind of systemic change can actually even be brought about.
Right.
And it just seems very, very hopeless sometimes. Like, even when there is good work being done. Like, Black Lives Matter has been a movement now for almost a decade.
Yeah.
I remember it early in my college career. So, like, I know that there is work being done and there is awareness and there is organizing, but these things keep happening.
Yes. And it seems so common sense that it is so exhausting when we are constantly reminded that the justice system is not just. Yeah, so it can get extremely exhausting, like you mentioned.
It's exhausting and it's bleak. Like with this latest killing, I know that the city where it happened has a mayor that is a person of color. And so the mayor's stance is that the officer should be fired, but the DA is hesitant to file charges like that or something. And so like Kendi was saying, even people with some power, are we really even using it to the greatest extent that we can? And utilizing power like that, it comes at a lot of personal risk and sacrifice as well.
Yes.
To like disrupt the status quo like that. Yeah.
I know people give Obama a hard time because they don't think he did enough, but first of all, it's like over 200 years of racism. Like, that wasn't going to be undone in 8 years. And also look at who he was working with. I think both the House and the Senate were Republican packed, and he got stopped. He got roadblocked with basically everything he tried to do. So it's just interesting, the roadblocks that occur for when you're actually trying to represent people who have been intentionally overlooked and underrepresented, as opposed to I think AOC said there's nothing easier than getting a tax bill passed, like a tax break for companies or anything for a company. So easy, right? But when we're talking about people, I remember they were trying to pass an anti-lynching policy. This is when Trump was still in office, I believe, in response to George Floyd, and the Senate had a really hard time with an anti-lynching policy. So the roadblocks of elected officials, might I remind everyone listening, these are people who have been elected. And I mean, we could talk about voter suppression because we should, who gets to vote, but these are elected officials. So that says a lot about who the population is electing.
And like, it is actively the voter suppression thing that's happening in Georgia too right now. It's just like, this is 2021. I'm just constantly baffled that there continues to be these systemic loopholes that enables white supremacy. Because like, I don't know how to I don't even know how to begin to start pulling the threads to like undo this.
Yeah.
Because even if we play by the rules and we're voting and we're showing up to vote, they're making it so it's illegal to pass out water in the voting lines.
Right. Which, why is that legal to do? How can you legally make it to where it is illegal to pass out water and snacks at a voting poll?
Because water isn't considered a basic human right in the United States, and we still have to pay our water bills and pay for water. I don't know.
Just how the law is being maneuvered in order to help support white supremacy, which is why I had a hard time talking about anti-white racism, because anti-white racism is essentially when white supremacy is not allowed.
When the status quo is white supremacy, yeah.
Like, so again, there's no such thing. It's like a deep breath. It's infuriating, yeah. And like you said, I have no idea what the answer is, other than let our people vote so we can get better people in office. How do you feel as we wrap up this episode?
I need to take a walk.
I do think we talked about what Kendi talked about. So I do feel we can wrap this with a bow, but there are a lot of things for people to think about as they leave this this book club. So I feel like my mind is open.
Well, I will see you then next week.
Thank you as always, Hannah.
Thank you. And we are talking about class.
We're talking about class, which I don't see it being any easier to talk about, but we'll see.
Absolutely not.